Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Colvin. I'm the founder of IvyLife and a virtual networking organization. And we have a special guest today, Debbie Irwin, who's a Lifetime IvyLife member and also has amazing career stories. And this is actually the first of a monthly series we have planned called IvyLife Spotlight, in which we'll be spotlighting the careers of various IvyLife and Vino members. So I'm really excited, Debbie, that you're the first of our guests. Thank you for participating.
Thank you for highlighting me,
Of
spotlighting
course.
me.
Of course. Very happy to do it. So my plan, unlike usual, is to be very quiet, Debbie, and just let you do most of the talking and share with us, how did you go from your Ivy League education to the various career stops along the way and become a very well-respected and successful voiceover artist?
Okay, well, before I answer that question, hello everybody. Thank you for showing up. You perhaps have a variety of reasons for why you're here. Maybe somebody told you that you have a fabulous voice and you should do voiceovers. Before I explain a little bit about my history, Chris, I'm going to ask you to play that demo, which is something that I recently produced and actually shows some of the outlier work. It's not if you think of a bell curve, it's not, the bulk of what I do on a normal day, but it's fun work to do nonetheless. So
Great. Here we go. And if you guys don't mind, give me the thumbs up if you or Debbie, give me a thumbs up if you're hearing the sound.
Yep.
Based on the popular card game, battle the ever-encroaching evil. Vanquish Sauron's forces. The Lord of the Rings living card game. It isn't by getting out of the world that we become enlightened. It's by getting into the world, by getting so tuned in that we can ride the waves of existence. My cello recitals brought me the acquaintance of some of Berlin's known intellectuals and artists. Everyone was there. Poets, musicians, painters. I was drawing attention and drawn to a life full of excitement. They are upon us, and the world is coming undone. The world tree is dying. Together, we can stop the unstoppable. My name is Claudia Kreutz. I am in charge of this asylum. Please do your best and determine what happened. Abandoned, defying all expectations. This dog was a winner. Wallace. Miss Bergatin. Dear war Rakir. Darturim Steinbart. In the realm of fairy, Rowan and those akin to her live in peace and serenity. Follow Rowan through her amazing journey in the heartlands of fairy. My mind brims with beautiful music, heavenly harmonics, charming melodies. They spring from my mind the way light emanates from a star. For centuries, the most courageous of souls, the strongest of heroes, have fought to protect His Highness. And only one shall be named defender of this kingdom. Let the games begin.
Okay.
Very cool. Yes.
All right. I'm not sure. Right. Not what we're usually used to seeing in this weekly meeting. So actually, I'm going to exit full screen here for myself so I can see my notes. So, right. How did I come here? I grew up in Chicago. After 3 years in high school, I went to the University of Chicago for 1 year with the intention of transferring. Then I went to Brown Had a great time at Brown, got a degree in semiotics. That's a discussion for another day. Came to New York in 1980 to pursue my dream of being an actress. Struggled like every other 20-something, with the million people on the cattle calls. Did that by day. By night, I worked as a bartender in a disco. Had a lot of fun. After a couple of years of doing that, I was ready for a real job and a regular paycheck. So I found work at the Guggenheim Museum, and I did PR and special events there. The nonprofit world is wonderful if you're independently wealthy or married to someone who is, and I was neither. So I was ready for a real job that paid real money, and I went to Wall Street. So I had a very successful career there, working for Dean Witter and then Smith Barney. And after 5 years there, I decided to leave Wall Street for Sesame Street when I started making babies. And I raised 3 kids here in New York. I'm in Tribeca. I've been down here for 32 years, something like that. And somewhere along the way, many years into motherhood, I was thinking about what I was going to do when I go back. And I, just couldn't fathom the idea of being a stockbroker again, and really struggled with what I was going to do. So I got the NYU School of Continuing Education booklet when they printed it, which was nice and thick. And that for me was like a candy store of ideas. And I also got the 92nd Street Y catalog. And in that, I found this class for voiceover. And I really didn't know what voiceover was, but the description was intriguing, and I decided to take it. So within 5 minutes of being in the class, I had a script in my hand, I was standing up, I was reading, and I knew that I had found it. So that was 16 years ago, in 2003. And I like to say that I'm living the dream that I came to New York for. I just didn't know it was going to look like this. So it's taken me a while to build this career. And let me ask you guys, and maybe if you can unmute yourselves if you want. My question is, what is voiceover? Do you know what applications, what do you think of when you think of voiceover? And Chris, you can pull up that document.
Yeah, I'll unmute all. Let's see. Let me unmute everybody. I unmuted everyone who did not unmute themselves. So let me pull up that list. Here,
obviously you saw video games there. You saw a documentary there. People think of, the commercials on radio that you listen to and kind of tune out from, on TV that, or on the web that you try to, skip ad as quickly as you can. But there are so many applications of voiceover. When we get on the subway and we hear, watch the closing doors. When you pick up a phone and to call a company and you really want to talk to a real person, but you get the for sales, press 1. For customer support, press 2. I'm sorry, sometimes even that is me. Salesforce training. There's Voice of God. If you ever go to an award ceremony, it's the ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin. Or, the video that they show, there's a narration around that to whoever the award winners are. There's a lot that happens in the medical arena for pharmaceutical sales, for patient education. There's a lot of internal corporate voiceover for benefits packages or HR compliance videos. Voices are everywhere, and in fact, if you think about it, you can close this screen if you want to, Chris. If you think about it, the Wizard of Oz, right? In when the wizard is when they're saying, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain, he was doing voiceover, right? That's what he was doing. Or as as a psychiatrist mentioned to me when I talked at a retirement community where my parents had lived, he came up to me afterwards and he said, I realize that with Freud, he was always sitting behind the couch, so his patient couldn't see him, but just hear him. So he's like, he was onto something there. So anyhow, these are other examples of voiceover that you can think of that perhaps you can, relate to in a different way. So what does it take to be successful? Honestly, if I had a nickel for every time somebody said to me, I want to do voiceover. People say I have a good voice. I could retire. I wouldn't want to because I love what I do. But it's so much more than what your voice is, because it's about what you do with your voice. And given the changes in, in our society and advertising in general, it's not about one specific voice or persona. It's all about diversity. It's all about all of us, right? I think it started years ago with Benetton campaigns where you saw people of every different color and ethnicity. And that's true for voices too. There's a place for all different kinds of voices. Now, just because I have a pen, that doesn't make me an author. If I have a knife, it doesn't make me a butcher or a surgeon. Obviously, we all talk. We have tremendous experience at talking, but that doesn't make you a voiceover artist or a skilled speaker. In order to be successful, there are obviously acting skills involved. There are microphone skills, mic technique that you need to understand. You have to have your own recording booth. It's de rigueur now. No longer is it just a matter of finding an agent and waiting for the phone to ring to have them call you in to go in front of a casting director and then show up to a studio. No, 80% of the work that I do, I produce in my own studio, as opposed to going out to other studios. So you also have to really be able to take direction and develop your ear in order to hear yourself. Those are two different parts of kind of the same, issue. As an example, I remember once I was in a session, and I had the director saying to me, "Debbie, can you give us a little less ginger?" And I'm thinking, ginger, okay, ginger. All right, what does ginger sound like? Ginger is spicy. Ginger is, it's in Thai food. Ginger is, and then he continued on and he said, "And a little more Marianne." I was like, okay, I got it. I'm old enough to know Gilligan's Island. You want less movie star and more Girl Next Door, So, all right, then I understood it, but to understand it is one thing. To be able to know how to change my performance and hear what it is that I'm doing so that I'm no longer doing what they didn't want me to do, and in fact, I'm coming up with something that's fresh and different. Those are separate skills. Obviously, and on top of that, as a solopreneur, there are all those other things that all of us have to do. And I just read today, I guess on the Freelancers Union, there are 60 million freelancers in the United States alone. It's a huge number. So, in that capacity, you have to be whatever your particular skill is. And then you have to be sales, and you have to be IT, and you have to be accounting. You have to be marketing. You need to be a web developer. You have to have, your web presence. So there are just so many other things that come into play in order to be successful, so much more than just a voice. And in fact, it's even arguable that having the perfect voice, if there is such a thing, there isn't, is less important than being able to be a business person and know how to put yourself out there, how to find clients, how to maintain those client relationships. And that's where, ironically, my time on Wall Street helped me the most out of all my experiences in the past to be successful today, because it was all about finding clients on your own and building trust, building those relationships and maintaining those relationships. So the other thing that's important to understand in this business is, how to serve your masters. And we have many masters. There's the client, there's the consumer, and there's the copywriter. So they all have different vested interests in a given script. So a client doesn't have technical ears. When they're hearing the script, they want to hear their name or their product highlighted, billboarded. We provide this, or our store, sells this and that. At Joe's shoe shop, this is what we do that's special. The consumer doesn't really care about that. The consumer wants to hear what the features and benefits are. What does it mean to me? Like, well, in the unlikely event that this will happen, then you can rest assured that blah, blah, blah. If you use this skin cream, then you'll have younger looking skin, right? Those are the things that are important to the consumer. And for the copywriter, those words are his or her babies, and they may have used clever phrases or, certain words to compare and contrast. They may have used alliteration or emotional change within the script, subcontext or unusual words. And you have to respect all those things. They're there for a reason, and they want to hear that, those words, those terms, those nuances brought to life in the script. So you have a lot of different masters that you have to be aware of and sensitive to. There are a few things that are unusual that I have to think about before I go to work, and I don't know what all of you do, and maybe there are some specific things that you guys have to think about before you go to work. But there's this sense that we all work in our pajamas, and since we work from home, I suppose it's possible that we do work in our pajamas. It's rare for me, but never say never, right? But what I do have to think about is I have to think about my jewelry, right? I love jewelry. I'm like a Christmas tree. I like to ornament myself, over the top. So here are, you can't see them, but you can hear them, the rings that I normally wear every day. So they have to come off because the slightest little movement, and you'll hear it. You don't even hear this much, but it's a tiny amount. So those things have to come off. My clothes. Now, I don't know what you guys are wearing, but I don't know if you can hear, this shirt that I'm wearing is extremely noisy. If you just kind of rub your arms, move a little bit, can you hear your clothes at all? In fact, can you hear mine?
Yes.
Right. Horrible, 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 horrible. All right. Absolutely horrible. So you have to be conscious. I think about what I'm going to wear, and not just like, is this going to look good? Is that, what's comfortable, but does it make noise? Because it can't make noise. And I'll share a funny anecdote in a moment after I tell you the last thing. The last thing is your stomach. Have you eaten? Is your stomach full, or is it saying, feed me, at all the wrong times? Our bodies make a whole lot of noises that you would be shocked to hear when you get in front of a mic that you didn't even know that you were making, from mouth noises to, little clicks or whatever. And they can be extremely difficult to get out of a word when you're doing the editing. In fact, one of the tools of my trade that I use are these, can you see it? These lemon glycerin swab sticks, which they use in hospitals. And actually it looks like this. So they're wet, and I, kind of do my mouth if my mouth is dry or if it's too wet, and they kind of magically get rid of a lot of that other stuff. But the stomach rumbling is tough to address if it's too late. You really have to be sure that you're well fed in advance, well fed and well hydrated. So the funny little anecdote that I'll share with you, this was, early in my career, and I went to a session, and I was in this adorable jumper, and so a jumper for you guys is, goes over a shirt, and it's a dress, and the best way to get emotion in your voice is to move your body, because that's what we normally do. Well, unbeknownst to me until I was in that session, underneath my jumper, there was a slip, and every time I moved, it was like, so this was not working. I had to take the dress off. Fortunately, there was a window that wasn't too big. It was like, from here on up. So I took my dress off, and I didn't see the rest of me, but I was quiet, and we continued on with the session. So from that point on, I was really careful about what I was wearing to work. Let's show another video. Let's show that compilation video now, which will show you, more of the normal work that I do.
The science of blood has been evolving since the 14th century. And the last 50 years, since New York Blood Center's founding, just the blink of an eye. But in our 5 decades has come unstoppable progress in blood science and transfusion medicine, safe blood management, as well as innovative medical programs and services. This is the progression of growth and achievement that has defined New York Blood Center. This is the story of its evolution. Attention, Cubo Channel fans! Cubo Channel is now available all day, every day. Watch more shows, meet more friends, and have more fun on Cubo Channel. It's Jennifer's $3.99 bonded leather sofa event. For a limited time only, choose from several styles. All just $3.99, combining style and comfort with quick delivery. Just $3.99. Save hundreds. Only from Jennifer Convertibles. Select sector spiders are unique ETFs that divide the S&P 500 into 9 sector index funds. Get back your swagger, your bounce, your jingle jangle. The New England Musculoskeletal Institute at Yukon Health Center. Mainline Health, 5 top hospitals, and the official healthcare partner of the 76ers. Go with the pros. Visit mainlinehealth.org/76ers. Want to open a Barclays account in minutes? It's easy. Let us show you. Start by choosing Open Your Account. As we write the story of our future, we're inspired by honoring our past, the traditions, memories, and the values we share, gathered together in a rich archive that tells the stories of our brand's beginnings.
Cool.
That was very cool. Thank you. I never would have guessed that was the same person. You know.
Let me exit the full screen again, and here we are. So one of the other things that I do in getting ready, of course, is having to warm up my voice. And my family likes to make fun of me of some of the funny noises and sounds. And in fact, Chris, if you would put up this, it's a tongue twister. And anyone who would like to have a crack at it, you can be my guest. So aside from the pa-pa-ba-ba-ba-ba, ta-ta-da-da-da-da-ka-ka-ga-ga-ga-ga, and the kinky cookie, taranala, tapika-bodega, tapika-bodega, kangaga exercises that I do, and others. This one tongue twister is an awful lot of fun, and I invite any one of you to have at it.
So if I will do it and embarrass myself, but if anybody wants to save me from that fate, please put up your hand or volunteer. Anybody? Oh boy. Okay. All right. I will do it. So I'm just doing the first one under warming up the voice?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have to try to do it fast?
No.
Okay. I'm a mother pheasant plucker. I pluck mother's pheasants. I'm the most pleasant mother pheasant plucker to ever pluck a mother pheasant. I'm not the pheasant plucker. I'm the pheasant plucker's wife. I've been plucking mother pheasants my whole pheasant plucking life. I'm not the pheasant plucker. I'm the pheasant plucker's mate. I'm only plucking pheasants because the pheasant plucker's late.
Oh, you did good. You did good. You got through that unscathed.
And it's being recorded.
Yes, the pressure was on. All right, well, you can see where this could easily run afoul. No pun intended. But these other ones are individual ones that, if nobody wants to embarrass themselves, are easier to do in the sense that perhaps they would be less embarrassing. So anybody else want to try it? Or, or if not, you can do these in the privacy of your own home, in the shower or the car or wherever. And
well, I'm gonna out Sally a little here, because Sally is a former broadcast journalist. So Sally, would you do one of them for us?
And in fact, do it 3 in a row. Okay, so take the first line and do it 3.
Oh, you're
3
pushy.
times.
Sorry. You have a nice voice though, so.
Really? Are you sure about that?
So
okay.
where's Sally starting with? Most people prefer pre.
Yeah.
And then she's going to repeat that line 3 times? Okay, Sally.
Oh, I have to repeat the one line 3 times? Or Oh,
yeah.
Most people prefer pre-shrunk sheets. Most people prefer pre-shrunk sheets. Most people prefer pre-shrunk sheets. Boy, that was a mess, wasn't it?
Yeah, they look easy, but they ain't. So unique New York, unique New York, unique New York. You know, any of these, they work at different parts of the mouth. Does anyone else wanna try one and maybe try and do it a little
You do it with
faster?
an accent. Most people prefer pre-shrunk sheets.
Who was that?
Me.
Try and do it a little faster.
And by the way, Chris, have you noticed I have sound now on my computer?
Yes, you do. I'm very impressed. Well, I think I'm going to keep tapping people on the virtual shoulder. Then, like Charlie, you have a natural broadcaster's voice, so maybe Charlie, would you be willing to do one? I'm going to.
Sure, I'll give it a shot.
Oh,
Red leather, yellow leather, lavender leather. Red leather, yellow leather, lavender leather. Red leather, yellow leather, lavender leather.
Good job.
I hope I never have to say that again.
Try another one for us, Charlie. Try the biscuits. Try the biscuits one.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Where's biscuits? A box of biscuits, a box of mixed biscuits, and biscuit mixer. A box of biscuits, a box of mixed biscuits, and biscuit mixer. A box of biscuits, a box of mixed biscuits, and biscuit mixer.
Okay.
That is tough.
That's tough, and you took your time with it.
And I say box a lot because thinking outside of is, kind of one of my.
There you go. All right. So
it's tough though. But Debbie, you're not making a case for people wanting to flock to take voiceover lessons. You put a lot of barriers up to.
I do.
She's keeping the competition down.
Exactly.
Okay, well, we can, and we'll share these with you so you can, if you want to have them, so you can practice, and call me later and show off your skills. That's totally fine. So let's exit the full screen here again. And I talked a little bit about advertising trends, and in the voiceover world, gone is the day of the big announcer voice. And when you get copy, you'll also get specs and directions. And they say non-announcer, no announcer. We don't want announcer. Make it conversational. Make it natural. Make a real person. And that's what it's all about now. So I thought it would be fun. We'll show a couple of other little videos. Then we can have some fun with some script analysis. We'll take a little phrase and do it different ways to get you to explore, as Sally was already showing us, sort of different prosodies, different emotions, different, which you want to think about depending on who you are and who you're talking to. Because if you are saying something to your kid, you wouldn't say those same words to your mom the same way, to your boss the same way, to your friend the same way. So we'll do that in a second. Let's show Chris some of the epigenetics video. So
Okay.
the bulk of what I do, as I mentioned before, is corporate and medical work. I specialize in medical work, which is a genre of the industry that not a lot of people like because it's complicated. There's tongue-twisting terminology. You have to have a level of intelligence to understand it so that you sound like you understand it, even if you don't necessarily understand all the science. And you also have to have a certain kind of voice.
If I had a really tiny voice like this, it really wouldn't be appropriate for me to do medical narration.
Unless it was a video targeted to kids. So in that sense, there is a certain appropriateness for certain voices and certain genres in this one in particular. So go ahead and play this. This was I've been working with some of the universities where they're training medical animators, and this was a master's research project for a student at the University of Toronto. Oops, not the right one.
It's not the right one? Sorry. Oh, I thought, that's funny. I thought I did the proper screen share. I'm going to stop the share and start again. Oh, here we go.
It's on,
Here we go.
Our genetic code, or DNA, is directed, controlled, and regulated by epigenetic factors which surround and scaffold the DNA in order to orchestrate the cellular mechanisms of life. The epigenome is the collection of DNA, RNA, proteins, and their chemical modifications that alter gene expression without changing genetic code. Discovery research in epigenetics seeks to understand how the environment influences regulation of genes packed within our chromatin, resulting in diseases such as cancer. Epigenetic machinery modifies accessibility of regions in DNA by adding marks to the tails of histones to create epigenetic patterns of chromatin modifications. The addition of an acetyl group to a histone tail changes the electrochemical charge of the histone, causing it to relax and release the DNA. This makes the DNA in that region more accessible to transcription machinery and allows that gene to be expressed. Placing a methyl group on histone tails can either increase or decrease that pattern of gene expression, depending on where the mark is placed. Additionally, placing a methyl group directly onto the DNA results in permanent shutdown of that genetic region. The epigenetic modification patterns of chromatin change during development and
That's okay. That's
the
okay.
process of applying.
I'm having a little technical difficulties. Here
That's
we go.
okay. No, we can end that one. And actually, you can play the Lone Pal, which is an explainer video, and that's something that didn't exist, I don't know, 10 years ago for sure. And you've seen them all over the place, and they have a very different, more conversational tone. And this one's kind of fun. There's some humor in it. So this will be the last one that we show, and then we can, play around with some language, and I'll answer your questions.
Great. Here's Lone Pal.
The process of applying for a home loan is a lot like searching for love online. Sometimes, when fantasy finally meets reality, there are a lot of unexpected surprises. Solid relationships aren't built on secrets. But if banks and brokers were always upfront about how difficult and time-consuming their loan process was, it could really hurt business. Plus, keeping you in the dark makes it easier for them to throw in last-minute surprises, like hidden costs and expensive lender fees. Sounds like shady stuff, right? But in reality, it is a lot like dating. Let's be real. How often are online dating profiles totally honest?
I'm John. I'm allergic to wine, afraid of the sun, and haven't worked out in 27 years. I look much older than I am, and I don't believe in romantic comedies or retirement accounts.
Well, at least he's into candle making. What really separates the lenders people loathe from the lenders people love is transparency. You deserve to know all the details up front. No surprises, just complete control. So the process is quick, easy, and totally stress-free.
Did I mention my mother lives with me?
Not now, John. We're making finance friendly, and that's why we're proud to call ourselves Lone Pal. With zero lender fees and no hidden costs, we avoid any unexpected surprises. Plus, we hook our friends up with great benefits like exclusive discounted rates and complimentary appraisals. As a direct lender, we make our own decisions, offering low rates and faster approvals. And we're much more than a mortgage company. We've launched a new platform that can take millions of people from new home to dream home. With home improvements like solar installations and smart home solutions, we're reshaping consumer finance altogether. Our mission is to build solid relationships by creating a lending experience like no other. That starts with transparency, bearing it all up front, like David does here. Poet, cardiologist, dog lover, slightly narcissistic. Well, I can live with that. Know your loan, love your lender. Lone Pal, this is how finance is made friendly.
That's cool.
So there you have it. Let's take a look at some of our questions. I mean, we can do you guys want to play a little bit around with a phrase? We can take the phrase, and then I left the room, And we can do it lots of different ways. If you guys want to play around with that, somebody could do it in a caring voice. Somebody can do it in a sarcastic voice. Anybody interested in playing, or shall we get to, we still have 20 minutes left, or 18 minutes.
I'll
Hands
play.
up. Good.
Okay. All right. So the phrase is, and then I left the room. So,
Okay.
you know, well, let me hear your interpretation first.
And then I left the room.
Okay. Let me hear it another way.
And then I left the room.
Okay. And give it to me a different way, please.
And then I left the room.
Okay. All right.
You
So
want another?
what, yes, please, another.
Oh, and then I left the room.
Oh. You know what? He said, I couldn't believe what he said to me. And then I left the room. Mm-hmm.
Well, you added context.
Well, hello, that's the point, right? Adding context is what changes the delivery. Giving yourself, like ad-libbing into it, understanding where you are and what you're saying and what's happening completely changes the phrase. So if you say, all right, let's say you were a doctor and you just came out of the hospital room where you had to tell the family that the patient wasn't going to make it. How do you say this? How do you say it then?
And then I left the room.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, you already gave us a number of different reads, and that was yet one more. So by changing who you're talking to and who you are, what the context is, it completely changes the delivery. So, you have to be facile in this way to give different reads right when they're saying, give me something different. And, directing talent is a skill that is not taught anywhere. Some people learn it over time. Some people never really learn it. So as a talent, you have to be able to self-direct, in part because oftentimes there is no director and it's incumbent on us to deliver different things, but also because a lot of times the client might not know what they want, and just as often it can be difficult for them. Maybe they hear it in their head, but they don't know how to communicate it. I had written a blog post some years ago called Lost in Translation, which was inspired by that, Ginger Marianne, comment. So when you're dealing with creatives, sometimes it's hard to communicate what that vision is, and then it's out there in one person's language, and it has to be translated into the receiver's language for them to really understand it. So anyhow, let's take some questions. Any questions?
I have a lot, but I'm assuming other people.
I do too. Actually, I am impressed all the time about how many commercials there are on television for different drugs. Mm-hmm. And then 5 minutes later and the drugs don't seem to do, they'll take your toe fungus away, but could kill you. Mm-hmm. And then there's, 5 minutes later, you'll find out that they're recalling something, or there's on the news, there's something about how some drug is not what it seems to be. Do you ever have any ethical quandaries about lending your voice to something that might not be all that it is and supporting it?
Well, I don't think I would do a spot for OxyContin and Juul.
But that you know that now. But
well, right. Okay. So, if I, so you're asking me, can I do it? How am I qualified to prejudge whether something is ultimately going to, to do harm? So I really can't. If it was known to be evil, then no. And do I have certain projects that I won't do because of my philosophy? or certain candidates that I won't do political ads for? Yes, absolutely. But, if you look at the side effects of any of these things, they can all kill you. And we're all terminal. So, at some point, something is going to get us. I mean, even the most benign thing, if you take too much of it. So, the drug companies do have to try to ameliorate the risk with the perception of it not being risky. So what you see is the visuals are people, walking in the park, couples, rowing the boat, everybody's smiling and laughing, kind of like, no, that medical spot that I did, that was just for the hospital. So they try to balance it out when the reality is, they have to, the good news is at least they're no longer with the important safety information like they used to. So now they have to read it in a fashion or deliver it in a fashion that it can be heard. And frankly, you could even ask the question about when you're in your doctor's office and they're prescribing something to you, is that ethical for them to prescribe it to you? Or, should you take it or not? Well, these are individual choices, and many of these drugs do. I mean, I don't think they would make it past the FDA if they didn't have some evidence of efficacy.
Right.
So,
any other questions for Debbie? Well, I will ask a couple if nobody else will, because I'm very curious to hear a couple of things I was wondering about. Was you've been a actor, a stage actor. You've also been a voiceover actor. Which one's harder, and which one do you like better? And what also, was there a gap between the two, because you had a substantial career in between being a professional actor and being a professional voiceover artist? And how did, was there a gap, and was that a challenge to get back into acting?
Yeah, there was a huge gap. The only thing that kind of tied me over a little bit was story time at night with my kids, when I got to read books and inhabit all kinds of characters, or when I bought the puppet theater and suddenly I'm playing with them in that way. They are very different, and I had to learn how to pull back, because stage acting is very, very different. If you have acting training, then it's a terrific foundation. But the reality is too that I continue to train. I train in acting. I train in with audition delivery. I train sometimes with accents. I see Elliot was asking me about that, and I also I think from the time I was very young, I've been a little bit of a mimic. Not that I can, do an impersonation, but even on the street, if I'm passing somebody, and I hear a tidbit of conversation, or I hear something they say in an interesting way, I grab it and I put it in my mouth and I say it again. It just it's like a knee-jerk reaction for me. So I love language. I love it in a lot of different ways. In growing up, we lived in Italy for 2 years, and we also lived in Mexico many times. So I've had, I think from a young age, an appreciation for other languages and for respecting other languages, so that you speak as it should be spoken. So I just finished a project about Ayn Rand, the Russian philosopher. It's a short film that's going to be at the Woodstock Film Festival, actually, at the beginning of next month. And I did that in a Russian accent. The one thing that was interesting in the initial clip that I showed you, that was all those different video games and whatnot. One of them was a fictional language. So they sent me this document of words, and what they were supposed to mean. And I don't even remember, did they tell me how to say them? Not even, when I got the script the first time I was auditioning, I was like, I don't even know what language this is. I don't even, and I, write back some questions. They're like, oh, just do it however. So I'm like, okay, have some fun. And, and then I booked it, and it was fun because it's like gibberish, but you have to make it sound like you know what you're saying because you're telling a story. It just happens to be in a language that nobody knows. So.
I noticed Esther asked about 4 or 5 questions on the chat window. Do you want to pick one and ask the one you're most curious about, Esther?
I actually have a different question that was inspired right now. How do you encourage people to focus on content, not on your voice? I love your voice, and I've been listening to it quite intently, and I've been getting carried away with that. And I was wanting to be more cognitive and rational. What do you do?
Well, it's funny because you know how I mentioned that I gave that talk at the retirement community? Well, the next day, this woman came up to my mom and said, "I'm very upset." My mom said, "Why? What's the matter?" She said, "Well, ever since your daughter gave that talk, I can't stop listening to voices. That's all I hear." Now, ideally, the voice is not, you're not listening to the voice. The voice is there to support the visuals, to support the story. And the same with the music. All of these components should be seamless if they're really working well together. Now, I'm not saying that all of these, reach that standard. I do my work and then I hand it over. I'm not responsible for the final mix. I'm not responsible for the music, etc. Although sometimes I actually do that work in the medical animations and narrations that I work on. I work with composers and animators. But you really don't want it to stick out because, when I've given talks to these medical animator communities, I show them examples of voices. It's like, you can't even focus on the content because the voice is like so distracting. It's so whatever, it's so wrong for the piece. Maybe it's a movie trailer voice and you're talking about, one of these scientific, mechanism of action or disease, videos. So the goal is to not have any one piece really stand out. And 2, you need to know that the quality of the video is good because people will tolerate a poor audio quality much longer than they will poor video quality. So, people disengage very quickly if the video is bad. Actually, I just said that wrong. It's the other way around. People will hang with video much longer than they will with audio. If the audio quality is like scratchy or if the
Right.
it's not synced properly, it's like you disconnect. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. So actually, Charlie had an interesting question, which was on the chat window, which is how often do you record yourself alone in the studio versus being in front of a director who's directing you?
Well, as I said before, 80% of the work that I do comes out of my studio. Of that, maybe 20% of it is I'm being directed, through the cans. So I have clients around the world, and I have the ability, like now I assume I'm sounding pretty good on your end.
Yes.
To connect with the client so they can direct me live in the session. And so, yeah, it maybe more than 20%. I was supposed to have a session this afternoon about IBM Watson Health, but there were some script changes, and they've postponed it for a little bit.
So that's interesting. So the director's actually talking in your ear. I assume they're on the phone or something, and they're listening to you and commenting, and you're doing multiple takes, I guess,
Yeah,
based
absolutely.
on the direction.
Absolutely.
So maybe another follow-up to Charlie's question is, so on a rough basis, what percentage of what you record actually ends up in a commercial in the case of a commercial?
Most of it does. I mean, I did something.
Okay.
I did something for Citibank or Chase. Chase. It was Chase Small Business, and I found out later that that it didn't get used. They were using these voices of people in a restaurant, and I made it to the cutting room floor. So I got paid for the session, but I didn't
Right.
get paid for the usage because it didn't get used. But most of the time it it gets used. In fact, something that I did recently that we should be seeing, it's sort of an anthem piece. It's a commercial, TV commercial for what was the Chicago Tribune, but they also have, I guess they own other publications, including the New York Daily News. So that should be running on TV here. And I'm also on Pandora a lot. So I've had people tell me, was that you on that McDonald's? Now I don't think McDonald's is particularly healthy, but I did the spot.
Yeah. Well, I want to let you off the ethical hook because I think it's actually the advertiser that needs to decide whether they're, and I've done false advertising cases as a lawyer, so I know it's really the advertiser's responsibility. And, I don't think you have to analyze the science yourself, for example, and figure out whether a product's healthy or not. And yeah, I think you're properly, that is actually your client's responsibility, I think.
So as Esther asked, thank you. Esther asked the question, how do I mimic safety and trust in my voice? And I don't know that I would say that I mimic it. I think that my voice has natural qualities to it, that it is trustworthy, it is warm, and there is authority to my voice. And so that makes me a perfect fit for certain kinds, like a lot of the healthcare content, a lot of financial, or and where they're looking for an intelligent voice. I don't have to do anything. I just have to be me. And those are just natural qualities to my voice. Your voice has certain natural qualities too that would make it right for a certain genre. And and then there are people who are chameleons, and I don't consider myself a chameleon, but but I can play around and do different things with it. But safety and trust are some of the key characteristics for a lot of the content that I do.
So maybe we're running out of time, but maybe a last question would be that I think sort of follows on what you just said is, how much of your talent, your voice talent, would you attribute to nature versus nurture?
I think it's nurture. I think it's nurture. The only other thought that's popping into my mind is when I was 8, I had my tonsils out and my voice changed. It got lower. And in the morning my voice is an octave lower, and so if I want to do something that requires that, I do it in the morning. Right. Otherwise, I have to wait a little while and get the voice, like coffee and the water and everything else for it to get into a more normal range. But right. I don't know. I mean, but then there's, it's nature too. How can it only be one, right?
Yeah. No, just curious because there might be, I don't know if anyone's listening or watching the video who has an ambition to do voiceover work, and is there a point at which it's just hopeless and you don't have the right instrument? You're not born with the instrument, and is there hope for those of us that don't have the golden baritone and weren't born?
You know what? It is not about the instrument. It's about the ears. It really is. It's about the ears. The ears are a muscle, and you don't think about that. You think about just the voice, right? Just the tongue and the throat, the lips. But if you can develop your ears, then you can work with your voice. But if you can't hear what you're doing and hear the difference, hear the nuance, then you're a one tone, one note Charlie. Oh, sorry, Charlie. A one note Nancy. I hope nobody here is named Nancy. And you'll never be invited back to the party by that client because they can't. You need to be versatile.
Well, Debbie, thank you so much. I could talk to you for hours, but your time's valuable, literally. So I really appreciate you participating in this IvyLife Spotlight, actually the first IvyLife Spotlight. I want to thank you for your time and your expertise. And also anyone who's live here or watches the recording, if you have another suggested guest for this series, we're going to do this each month. And I really want to feature a different IvyLife member with a fascinating career story like Debbie. So thanks again, Debbie.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for showing up and for playing in the sandbox with me a little bit.
Our pleasure.